Good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 9 of SLS 2264 Leadership Development Studies. We are going to go ahead and take a look at where we are and where we're going. We are getting very close to the end of the term, which means that it is about time to start our big assignment of a paper and a presentation about a leader in today's world. So we're going to start talking about that. And before we do, though, let's take a look at the syllabus. As I mentioned, we are entering week 9, which means we're completing unit number 4, articulating a vision. So this week, of course, you have a journal due, and going back, of course, and responding to others on the previous discussion board. So we do not have we really are not starting the research paper until next week, but I am going to go ahead and preview it for you. It's definitely a Monday morning. And that way, if you want to get started, or certainly if you want to get started thinking about who you might be interested in writing about, that's a good thing to get going with. So let me go ahead and go to the modules. Nothing terribly new. Oops, I don't want to do that. I mean, even if I want to do it, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to create extra work for you. So we're in module 4. There's nothing new. The learning materials, of course, are right here where we left them. You've got the link to the free materials, and you've got this unit articulating a vision. The main pieces are Henry V, Sojourner Truth, and then, of course, the 4 TED Talks, as usual. There's also a recommended film, and this one many of you will actually have seen, which is Black Panther. So you certainly can utilize that as one of your journal sources as well. As usual, just a reminder, the journal should be 5 paragraphs. It should have at least 2 of the sources provided involved, and 3 takeaways or lessons that you have learned that you are defining well and developing well with good detail in the body. All right. So, and of course, there's a lecture as well. The links, of course, to the assignments are in the module. You've got last week's discussion board, which most of you had done well in advance, and then the journal. So the rules are exactly the same for the journal. That's right there. So as I mentioned, I do want to take a couple of minutes and preview your leadership profile research paper and presentation. So starting next week, we're going to be getting into research, including learning about information literacy, and another of Phi Theta Kappa's units, this one, Unit 8, guiding through conflict. But I want to just preview the research paper and explain and show you where the different pieces and parts are for that major assignment. In week 10, my brain is not working this morning. I'm looking at the number 8 in unit. In week 10, so the very first, next week, okay, next week, you will go ahead and submit your profile topic choice. And then you will have 2 weeks to complete the first draft of the leadership profile paper. You can see those listed right here for you. In the coming weeks, you're going to be turning in the leadership profile paper. That is not due until 2 weeks after that rough draft. So you'll have my feedback, and then you'll be able to revise it. In addition, though, to the research paper on November 27th, you're going to turn in your PowerPoint, because you're going to take essentially the same content, the same information that you're writing a paper about, and you're going to turn that into a presentation as well. And don't worry, we'll talk about doing that. But just so you have those things on your horizon. Now, the very last thing that you'll submit in the class is the profile presentation, either a video or live delivery. Now, live delivery will be before December 4th, but you will have your PowerPoint and everything submitted on November 27th. So you will be able to turn right around, do that presentation. You can video it a number of different ways, and we'll talk about those. But I'm also going to give some times and days when you can pop into the Zoom and record it, or not record it, but present it with me and hopefully with some of your classmates. I like it when more than one person signs up for those at the same time, because it makes it more entertaining for me and for your classmates. Having me just by myself as an audience is fine, but it's not ideal. So that's what's going on with that assignment. So the content that you're going to start working on next week is going to carry you through the rest of the term, while we're finishing 2 additional Phi Theta Kappa modules, which is conflict and empowerment. Okay, so those things will be very familiar to you. Those are kind of going to be running in the background. You should be very good at that by now, because we've kind of got that content down, or how to deal with that content. So the additional assignment will be the research paper. So I want to talk about that, and I'm going to go ahead and open next week's module, and you guys can look ahead. There's nothing wrong with looking ahead. In next week's learning materials, you're going to be learning about information literacy and writing essays, which you already know about, but I have not been a real stickler for proper documentation, making sure the format's perfect, all that good stuff. So you're going to have some review of that. And then we're going to have the assignment. The assignment sheet for the leadership profile paper is right above the free version of the regular course materials. So you've kind of got 2 sets of things that you are working on in the coming module, where we've really only had 1 set of things at a time. So you'll have everything related to the leadership profile paper comes first, and then you get into the normal Unit 8 course materials, which in this case, like I said, is conflict. But I'm going to go ahead and open this for you and show you what you are working on. So this is the official research paper assignment and sample lesson. You've got an overview. Students will choose from a list of approved leaders. They're listed below. Then students will conduct credible research on their person and write a paper detailing this person's leadership philosophy. So it's going to be in MLA format. It's going to use MLA documentation. And we've already been practicing with that. Some of you are more comfortable with it than others, but like you saw, there's a lot of lessons and reviews about how to do it in this unit. So it's MLA. You may use photos and other visuals. You have to cite them if you do, and they do not contribute to the length requirements. So if you're writing a paper about somebody like Elon Musk, for example, you might want to put a picture of him in it. You might want to put the Tesla logo or something. You can make it visually interesting if you want, but you don't have to. Your paper portion can just be very plain in a paper. Now, as you're finding photos and things that you might want to use, though, remember you do eventually do a PowerPoint. So you may want to save those, keep a record of documentation for those and that sort of stuff, because you may use them in the PowerPoint even if you don't use them in the paper. Works cited page is required, of course, because you are conducting research. That does not count towards the length requirements either. So if you've got a ton of pictures and a big long works cited page, that's great. But the paper itself, the actual paper, should be at least 1,000 words. And that's, of course, the last one on here, but I wanted to mention it right now. All quotations and paraphrased information from research must be clearly cited both on the works cited page and internally through the use of parenthetical citations. I have not been that tough on those, the in-text citations, but they are absolutely 100% required for the research paper. It's a little bit different when you're just doing a journal for the materials that are in the class, because I know where the materials are. But we've been trying to practice it, get comfortable with it, and hopefully that has helped. So the focus of the paper is on, and minimum of 3 academically sound sources required. Wikipedia is not an academically sound source, which most of you already know. Leadership focus. While students no doubt will give a biography of their chosen leader, remember to focus not just on his or her life, but on his or her leadership philosophy. So as much as you possibly can, you may not have something to say for all of these, but these are the corresponding units that we've dealt with and learned about in our work previously. What is their leadership philosophy? What are their vision and goals for their organization? Have they publicly talked, or can you find information about their conflict management techniques and suggestions? How do they establish and build trust, and how do they empower others? You notice I didn't include servant leadership on here because very few people on this list are going to fall under the servant leadership category. But of course, if yours does, you should also focus on servant leadership. Late work for this one, you will lose points because it's at the very end of the term. It is absolutely very important to get these things in on time. So keep that in mind. Now, here's the leadership list, and they are in literally no order. Some of these people are no longer in the position that they were in. It's maybe a year or two old, but most of these people are still fairly active in the world. And even if they are no longer in their particular position, you can definitely go ahead and use the people on this list. You cannot use anyone who is not on this list, period. Don't ask. You're just not. This is the list, okay? There's 40 people to choose from, so I'm sure that you can find somebody that you're interested in. So then we have some samples. The first thing you're going to turn in, as I mentioned, is a topic choice and an outline, which will have an initial bibliography. You can go ahead and start looking for some sources. And this is how it will look. Now, I use the Pope as a sample here because he was the very first one on here. You're going to be writing them in Canvas, but I would save everything in Word. Like, go ahead and write it in Word, and then you can copy and paste what you need there. So you'll have a topic choice, which is in paragraph form. As a Roman Catholic who converted in adulthood, I am fascinated by the current Pope. Therefore, I plan on writing about Pope Francis in my SLS leadership report. I will cover his biography as well as both statements and actions that reveal his leadership style. And then we have an outline. A lot of people are not familiar with outlines, but don't think of it as some weird thing. It's just a list of what you want to include. So you'll notice here, there's just a list, summary of last few popes, Francis's early life, entering the clergy and being a Jesuit, his time as Pope, what important statements has he made, what important actions has he taken, expert opinions on Francis's leadership, and then a conclusion. So it's literally, the outline is just a list. Then I have my bibliography. You will notice that every source on this list is from the library. This is not to be a web heavy research paper. And I will show you next week how to get these kinds of resources. So, but keep that in mind. I also have a link to the Citation Center. The Library Citation Center has everything that you could possibly need to help you in creating your citations. That's what the first thing's for. But the main reason I linked you here was that you have an MLA sample paper. Notice this is in Word format, so this can be used as a template. Okay. And you've got some other things that most of which you will not need. This is probably going to come in handy. MLA images because you may not have used images before in writing papers. So that can be very helpful, the link there. Okay, so this is where you're going to go for the help on the citations and the documentation. And then, of course, you're going to go to the library's homepage to find resources. And like I said, I'll demo that next week. Okay, so that's what's going on for this week. Super easy. And then the upcoming weeks, I promise you it will not be super hard. We'll walk through it together. But that way you already have an idea of what is coming. And if you've got questions, of course, as usual, don't hesitate to ask. If you've got questions about the assignment, like the leadership stuff, it's really helpful if you ask those on the Q&A discussion board, because then everybody can have access to the answers at the same time. With that, I hope you have a great week 9, and I will see you again in week 10. Everyone have a good one, and try not to work too hard.